The corner drugstore in America was an institution, not just a pharmacy, a community center, a gathering place, a business that knew its customers and served its neighborhood. The drugstore was where you went for medicine, advice, lunch, conversation, and connection. The 1960s were the twilight of the independent corner drugstore. Chain pharmacies were emerging, and suburban shopping centers were pulling customers away. But through most of the decade, the locally owned drugstore remained central to neighborhood life. This was before CVS and Walgreens dominated everything. The 1960s drugstore was owned by the pharmacist whose name was on the sign. It was personal, local, and irreplaceable. Let's walk through what the corner drugstore was actually like in 1960s America. Let's step into that world. The building sat on a corner, hence the name. It was usually a single-story brick or stone structure, with large display windows showing merchandise and seasonal decorations. The name painted on the window read Miller's Pharmacy or Johnson Drugstore. The owner's name was the brand. The entrance had a bell that rang when you opened the door, announcing every customer. The pharmacist would look up from behind the counter, recognize you, and greet you by name. Walking inside meant entering a specific sensory world. The smell hit you immediately. Cherry syrup from the soda fountain, coffee brewing, medicine and alcohol from the pharmacy counter, newsprint from magazines, floor wax on the linoleum. The smell was impossible to describe, but impossible to forget. The floor was checkered linoleum or tile. Black and white squares appeared in many stores. The floor gleamed under regular waxing. The soda fountain was the heart of the store. A long counter with chrome and formica, red vinyl stools that spun, a mirror behind the counter reflecting rows of syrup dispensers. The fountain served ice cream, sodas, malteds, shakes, sundaes, and simple lunch items. The soda jerk, usually a teenage employee, worked behind the counter. White paper hat, white apron. The soda jerk would mix drinks, scoop ice cream, and work the grill. Making a proper ice cream soda or chocolate malt was an art. The menu was handwritten on a board or printed on laminated cards. Cherry Coke, vanilla Coke, lime Ricky, egg cream, ice cream soda, malted milk, banana split, hot fudge sundae. The drinks were made from scratch with syrup, carbonated water, and ice cream mixed together. Sitting at the fountain meant spinning on the stool, ordering your drink, and watching it being made. The soda jerk would put a glass under the syrup dispenser, pump cherry syrup, add carbonated water, and plop a scoop of ice cream on top. The drink would fizz and overflow slightly. The lunch counter extended from the soda fountain. A simple menu, grilled cheese sandwiches, hamburgers, hot dogs, BLT sandwiches, tuna salad, and soup. The food was basic, but good. The grill sizzled behind the counter. Regulars came for lunch every day. They sat on the same stool and ordered the same thing. The soda jerk would know their order before they spoke, and that familiarity created comfort and routine. The pharmacy counter was in the back, a raised area where the pharmacist worked, elevated to be visible across the store. The pharmacist wore a white coat, a symbol of medical authority. The pharmacist was a professional and a community member. In the 1960s, the pharmacist was almost always a man, and he knew every customer. He knew their health conditions, knew what medications they took, and he would offer advice beyond just filling prescriptions. The pharmacist would compound medications by hand, mixing powders, creating suspensions, and filling capsules. Much of pharmacy was still manual preparation rather than just counting pills from bottles. Prescriptions were handwritten by doctors and brought to the pharmacy. The pharmacist would read the doctor's handwriting, a skill in itself, then fill the prescription, type a label on an actual typewriter, and put the pills in an amber bottle. The relationship between pharmacist and customer was personal and private. People discussed health concerns and asked for advice. The pharmacist was a medical authority more accessible than doctors. The magazine rack covered an entire wall, filled with dozens of magazines. Wire racks held titles like Life, Look, Saturday Evening Post, Reader's Digest, Ladies' Home Journal, Popular Mechanics, and National Geographic. People browsed magazines extensively, often reading entire articles while standing there. Some bought copies, others just read. The drugstore tolerated browsers because they often bought other items. The comic book rack was separate and almost sacred to children. Spinning wire racks were full of Superman, Batman, Archie, and Richie Rich. Kids would spend entire afternoons reading comics, rotating the rack, getting lost in stories. The unwritten rule was simple. You could read if you were gentle. Do not damage the comics. Do not fold the covers. The owner accepted that comic rack browsing brought kids into the store where they would buy candy. The paperback book rack held westerns, mysteries, and romance novels. The paperbacks were impulse purchases, cheap entertainment with lurid and eye-catching covers. Paperbacks caught the eye and invited a quick purchase. The candy counter was glass-fronted, with display cases and bins of penny candy, chocolate bars, gum, and mints. Candy was sold by the piece or by weight. Kids came in with nickels and pointed to what they wanted. Candy brought families and repeat customers. The school supplies section expanded before school started, with pencils, pens, notebooks, folders, rulers, erasers, and crayons. Parents brought children to buy supplies. The drugstore was one-stop shopping for back-to-school needs. The greeting card section offered cards for every occasion, Hallmark cards on rotating racks for birthday, anniversary, sympathy, and get well. Browsing cards meant reading each one carefully, finding the perfect message. Cards were a small but steady business. The first aid and over-the-counter medication section sat near the pharmacy, with aspirin, Band-Aids, hydrogen peroxide, mercurochrome, Vicks VapoRub, and cough syrup. The pharmacist could recommend products if asked, and often did. The phone booth was in the corner. A wooden booth with a folding door, a bench seat, a rotary phone. You would close the door for privacy, drop a dime, and make your call. The phone booth was essential before everyone had phones at home. The delivery service was standard. The drugstore would deliver prescriptions to your home. The delivery boy, usually a teenager on a bicycle, would ride through the neighborhood delivering orders. The service was free or nearly free. The soda fountain attracted teenagers after school. The drugstore would fill with high school kids ordering Cokes and fries. The booths and counter would be packed. The pharmacist tolerated it because those teenagers were future customers. The jukebox in the corner played 45s. You could get 3 plays for a quarter. The music was rock and roll, doo-wop, and early rock. Artists included Elvis and, later in the decade, the Beatles. The jukebox made the drugstore feel current. The elderly would come daily, not necessarily to buy anything. They would sit at the counter, have coffee, and talk to the pharmacist or other regulars. The drugstore was social infrastructure for people who lived alone. The pharmacist knew everyone's business. He or she knew who was sick, who was struggling, who needed help. The pharmacist would extend credit to families having hard times. The prescription could be paid later. Those personal relationships created loyalty. You did not shop around for the best price. You went to your pharmacist. The relationship was worth more than saving a few cents. The hours were long. The drugstore opened early and closed late. The pharmacist often lived above or near the store. Being available mattered. If someone needed medication urgently, the pharmacist could be reached. The decline started in the 1960s. Chain pharmacies were opening in shopping centers. The chains offered lower prices through volume, and self-service replaced personal service. Convenience often mattered more than relationships. The suburban shift pulled customers away. Downtown neighborhoods were declining as people moved to the suburbs. Shoppers began going to strip malls instead of walking to corner stores. The automobile changed how people shopped. The independent pharmacist could not compete on price. Chain firms bought in bulk and used centralized distribution. They could undercut the corner drugstore on virtually every item. What defined the corner drugstore in the 1960s was community integration. The store was not just a business. It was where neighbors gathered, where kids hung out, where the elderly found company, where everyone felt known. The pharmacist was not just a merchant. He was a community pillar, a medical advisor, a credit extender, a trusted figure who held confidences and served his neighborhood. The soda fountain created a social space, the counter where different generations mixed, where teens flirted, where adults relaxed. The fountain was public space that belonged to everyone. For people who remember corner drugstores in the 1960s, the nostalgia is profound. The smell of cherry Coke and coffee, the spinning stools at the fountain, the pharmacist in his white coat greeting you by name, the comic book rack, the sense of belonging to a neighborhood. The corner drugstore represented an era when commerce was local and personal, when businesses knew their customers, when shopping meant human interaction rather than transactions, when neighborhoods had centers and gathering places. The chain pharmacies that replaced corner drugstores are more efficient, have lower prices, and offer more products. But they do not know your name, do not know your family, do not serve as community centers. For those who remember, the corner drugstore was what it was, a business, yes, but also a place where you belonged, where you were known, where community happened alongside commerce.